Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You're listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It's Monday, December 15th, 2014. That means it's Manipulation Monday, and we're on with Andrew Hoffman. Andy, how are you?
Yeah, you know how I'm doing, Kerry.
I know.
I'm just, I'm highly doubtful there's anyone in the world who puts as much mental energy into trying to spread the word of truth, but it's really not that difficult anymore. I mean, look, we're doing this call. It's half an hour after the 12 o'clock cap of last resort. And just as gold and silver were finally about to break out, they just went into all-out attack mode. I mean, I did an article last Wednesday afternoon called Desperation Tutorial showing, now that we're in this final stage where oil's collapsing and markets are collapsing, I showed just how desperate their efforts were last Wednesday. And then I wrote Friday about how Thursday was dramatically worse. And then, of course, Friday, where, the markets were really falling apart and they were just capping gold and trying to keep the Dow from doing what the rest of the world was doing, was just off the charts. And then I even had to, on Sunday night, when the gold tried to go up and they started again for the 77th time in 78 Sunday nights. I even wrote another article last night about it. And then again today. And, here we are with oil at $56.30 a barrel. And interest rates, despite every Fed effort to get them back up, which I've been talking about forever that they're going to fail to do, are back near the lows of the day. And the European equities have collapsed. And my God, look at the currencies of the world in utter free fall, which is what I wrote about 2 months ago. And I said the single most precious metal bullish factor imaginable. And then you have the commodity collapse, and I'm looking at right now, it's not just oil, it's across the board. And we're almost down to the 2008 levels across the board. There's going to be, forget the third of the S&P 500 capex that's oil. I mean, that's all toast. We're talking about all commodity capex across the board is going to be gone within a few months right now. We are really, really talking about, as I said, 2008, with one temporary exception of PPT-supported stock markets, which are, aside from the Dow, which they just won't let it do what it wants to do, everything else around the world is falling rather, very sharply.
Oh, yeah. It's breathtaking how bad it's going here. And, you just shake your head. You just can't believe what's going on here,
I mean, I wrote that audio blog a few weeks ago called Revenge of the People. And I said, look, it's not a coincidence that all of a sudden you're seeing all of these elections, some of them snap elections like in Japan or in Greece, some of them that were well thought out like Catalonia. And then, of course, there's Switzerland and there was Scotland. It's because the people are so angry around the world, what's happening to them, and that's when they talk about deflation, it's even more comical. You have to look, people, at what's going on in currencies. My article today, notwithstanding the $15 drop in gold, which is literally just happened in the last 10 minutes because they're so desperate. It's 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, which is what I call the cap of last resort. The average gold price around the world is up 5% this year. Because of the currency declines. And in Europe, for instance, it's 12 to 15%. In Russia, gold has doubled to an all-time high. Heck, the ruble is down 10% today alone. And that's just one currency. If you look across the board, major currencies, the chart that I have in today's article, it shows that the currencies that take up 75% of the world's population are down significantly this year and getting worse. Because this is what happens. It's not the dollar getting stronger. It's called people in absolute utter fear of 2008 just moving into the most liquid assets, which is why the, quote, dollar is up against other currencies. And it's why treasury bonds, which, of course, as we know, are the least fundamentally sound asset on the planet, given what's going on. People are racing into them, as I call it, front running the most damning proof of QE failure, which is the plummeting rates despite the so-called recovery. And that's why, you have this Fed meeting on Wednesday. It's almost laughable that you still have people on Wall Street going, well, I wonder if they're going to take that considerable time language out of their statement and replace it with, we'll be patient with when we raise rates. Raise rates. We are talking about, as we speak, the rates have almost gone through on the 10-year, that liquidity vacuum day last month. And actually, they're far lower on the 30-year than they were during that day in October before the PPT went berserk, pushing things back up. We are talking about right now an utter collapse of the global economy as we speak. It's not coming. It's here right now. And the only difference is that the U.S., not the rest of the world, the United States government is doing everything in its power to get that Dow Jones propaganda average from collapsing like everything else. And of course, trying to keep interest rates from plummeting, which they're failing at. And, look, they can't control everything. That's the whole point. They can't control the oil market. Trust me, they would do anything to get it higher. But today it's 56.30 as I speak. They can't do it. Just like they can't stop the whole world from front-running people buying treasury bonds because they know that we're going to have QE to infinity. And, even better when you see them, what they're doing to paper gold and silver as record demand. I mean, you see literally the headline on the other day was Silver Eagle demand, shatters last year's record. And then you see them literally, everyone should take a look at today's Kitco chart. They just took silver down 30 cents or 27 cents in a matter of 3 minutes. I wrote an article 2 years ago called Irrefutable Precious Metal Manipulation Proof, showing how since April 2013, when Obama had his meeting with the too big to fail bank CEOs, and the next day gold fell $250 an ounce, since then, there's been a 2% intraday drop in silver on half of all trading days. In most cases like this. I mean, and of course, it's no actual metal being sold. I can tell you that from working at one of the largest bullion dealers in America, and also from the fact that there's not a chance you'd even have the ability to sell that stuff that fast. And we were talking about, colossal forces that are crashing into each other right now. And it doesn't matter how much the powers that be try to, mask it with stock market manipulation or paper gold manipulation. They are losing decidedly where it matters in the currency markets, in the commodity markets, and of course in the court of public opinion, where people around the world are voting out the old and in with the new. It just happened here in the States. Not that it matters where we voted the Democrats out of the Senate, but I just fear for what's coming next because for instance, when you see this weekend, we just had yesterday these Japanese snap elections. And Shinzo Abe's party won by a landslide. They didn't just win. The people of Japan, these are old people who don't even own stocks anymore because they desperately need money for retirement. They voted to stick with this plan, which has so devastated Japan's economy and pushed it that much closer to hyperinflation. It makes me fear that we're in the stage of where some people around the world are in this state of denial, almost like 1930s Germany.
Yeah, where they're out there, in the cabaret, right? Remember, that's what cabaret was about?
Is it?
Yeah, I think so, if I remember correctly. And
I'm just in a rare mood. Sorry about that.
Yeah, but seriously, that state of denial, kind of like the whole world is living in it because it's so much easier to be in a state of denial than to actually deal with what's happening here, right?
Yeah, well, it's like I wrote about how back in the year 2000, when I was an oil field service analyst at Solomon, I voted for George W. Bush in the presidential election. Now, again, I didn't know who George Bush was from a hole in the wall, other than that he was son of another, he's an oil man in the oil man's family. I didn't like Gore, so that's part of it, but really not the big part. The big part was it was kind of like if any time that Gore was winning the polls, the oil stocks would go down. So I said, I got to vote.
Yeah, this is
Bush.
Bad.
Yeah, and it's the same kind of fear mongering that you saw in Switzerland, basically, where they're like, if you vote, and by the way, it turned out that the oil stocks spent the next 4 years going down. So not only, did I choose the wrong methodology, it didn't even turn out to be correct. It didn't have the slightest bit of impact If anything, oil stocks were down during Bush's reign of terror. But the point is, they trying the scaremongering tactic in Switzerland, which, to an extent worked a little more because the Swiss stock market at least is near its all-time high, and you do have some wealthy people that own stocks. But in Japan, the Japanese stock market is down 60% from a high hit 25 years ago, and in inflation-adjusted terms, is probably down 80 or 90%.
Oh, yeah.
And most people don't even own stocks anymore, and yet they just figured, well, if I vote against it, then the stock market will fall and confidence will fall. But confidence is already at a record low. He has record low approval ratings, and the reason he called the snap elections because approval was at a record low. Not that there's many options for Japan, of course, but to think that they gave a mandate to this madman who not only has screwed up Japan once, but twice. He was the prime minister in 2006 and 2007 and did the same thing and failed at that. It just shows you that people are it's a state of madness. Anyone who still has any money left to believe that any of these central bankers or politicians, what they say, it's just incredible. And of course, I mean, it's ending badly all over the world right now, and it's going to end everywhere. All over the world, even for the reserve currency and the best manipulative, stock market, gold cartel, all that stuff, engines in the world, they'll lose just like they always lose. But my God, we're in just this kind of limbo state right now where it's pure madness rules.
Yeah, well, we're in like purgatory, We're not here, we're not there, and you know what's going to happen. And, it can't happen any other way, but it doesn't make you feel any better,
Well, it certainly doesn't make you feel better when you happen to be me because of my unique mental makeup and also my unique knowledge of what's going on. I mean, I can't tell people enough. I must spend a good dozen hours every single day poring over this to know everything I could possibly know. And, it is just mind-boggling to see how long this has taken to not fully play out. And of course, we're talking about a major inflection point in history. Of course, things take longer than one would expect. But, when you see record gold and silver demand around the world, and yet they're able to continue to do the same things every day in the same way at the same times of day when there's no actual gold and silver being sold, and to keep stock markets up when you know that there's no one left buying except for them and their computers, it's amazing. I mean, you look at Germany, their stock market's down 6% in the last 2 days, and they don't have an oil industry. Yeah. Our biggest industry in the United States, literally the only industry, and whether it's a fraudulent one or not doesn't matter. It's the only industry in this country which has had positive GDP growth and employment growth in the past 7 or 8 years.
Oh, yeah.
And it's completely collapsing. And you know what the Dow is down in the last 2 days? Barely over 1%, maybe 1.5%, because this PPT is unrelenting. They just will not take no for an answer. And, I can't wait to see what happens with this FOMC meeting. If they're crazy enough to actually say that, yeah, well, we think things are getting better. I mean, did you see the Empire State Manufacturing Index today? It went from plus 12 to minus 4. I mean, this is endemic of what you're seeing across the entire country. The only number that was higher in the last week was you had, what was the one last week? Capital spending, construction spending, because of a 20% increase in government capital spending. I mean, what were they building? Oh, yeah.
Probably more NSA spying centers or fusion centers, right?
Yeah. I mean, the fact that it's even reported as capital spending when the government spends money on missiles. They print money and buy missiles with it. And then they write that's GDP growth. First of all, GDP growth implies building something that's of use. To build a bomb and blow it up not only doesn't use anything, it destroys. And to do it with printed money makes it even less. It should be negative GDP if they spend money buying missiles. I mean, it's truly amazing that, very few people are paying attention anymore. We know that, but that this game goes on. And I'm reading this morning, will the Fed take out considerable time? Considerable time. I mean, look at the 10-year Treasury yield. It's 209. Look at the 30-year bond. The 30-year Treasury yield is below the level that it hit that day in October when everything was collapsing. it's at a multi-year low. I mean, we may hit all-time lows on Treasury yields within the next month, and they're worried about whether the Fed will talk about how it may raise interest rates when market rates are hitting all-time lows.
Yeah.
And what are they going to raise them from, by the way? They're going to go from 0 to 0.5%. Is that considered even raising rates from a rounding standpoint?
So forget it. It just can't be done here. Pushing on a string and all that. And, where are we going to next here? I mean, how much longer can they keep this thing going? Do they really think they can keep it going, or do they care, or are they buying time? I mean, that's what I'm really curious about here. What's your thought on that?
They don't think that they can. I mean, yes, I take it back. There are people out there like Janet Yellen who have been so indoctrinated for their entire career about Keynesianism that they believe that they actually can do something. But, when you talk about Wall Street, and I'm not talking about, young traders. I'm talking about the people who run Wall Street. Of course, they know. They're not stupid. You don't get to be in a position of power in the money industry without understanding money. And I mean, by any objective measure, as I said, it's 2008. I mean, it's here. I wrote that subprime, Shale 2015 is subprime 2008. It's the same thing. It's bigger. It's much bigger than it was because it's a global phenomenon. And it's all high cost energy production that war is being declared on. And demand objectively around the world is much lower than it was in 2008. That's what's so funny when everyone thinks, well, 2008, the economy plunged, but then it came back and, now it's going down again. No, people, take a look at what the global economy was at the worst point in 2008. Okay. And I'm not talking about literally the worst 2 seconds where there was a little deer in headlights mentality for 2 or 3 weeks. I'm talking about the absolute level of global employment, of global debt, of global confidence, all these things dramatically higher than it is today. And all semblance of confidence is gone now. And certainly any dry powder or ability of governments or central bank. I mean, can you imagine, like, if the Fed, let's say we have another crash in the next 2 days, and the Fed really, truly, has to back off, this considerable time stuff, and says, well, yeah, we're thinking about doing QE. Does anyone really think that's going to work? Like, if they came out and said, we're going to do QE4 and it's going to be, $150 billion a month, do people really think that will make stock markets go up around the world? It will be the biggest flight of fear in history if they said that. And I know people want to believe, well, markets will just hyperinflate like in Argentina. No, I mean, if they tried to do that, we're talking about currencies everywhere, which are already collapsed, will go into oblivion.
Yeah, so we're getting to the end of the road here where there just aren't going to be any options, are there?
Yeah, well, it's, as they say, it's the darkest before the dawn. And, I mean, when I say that I'm this stressed out, from a financial standpoint, I'm fine. I keep my money in gold and silver, in physical gold and silver. I don't worry at all. I just, it's like pull out my hair with frustration at the ability of some very, very evil people, to make things worse in their machinations on a daily basis. But, I mean, the end game is set in stone. As I wrote today, the precious metal bear market is over. I mean, it's over because currencies are collapsing so fast that it doesn't matter what the powers that be do. And as I said, the physical demand is exploding. Well, the supply is on the verge of collapsing. So there's no other way that things can go. But yes, it is the darkest from a psychological standpoint in watching how there's a complete and utter, I call it the chasm of destruction, the difference between the reality and what some financial markets, not all, but some financial markets like the U.S. stock markets are showing. And of course, at some point, it's going to completely decouple and you're going to see a reality that makes 2008 look not so bad.
Yeah, it's just shocking that it can keep going on and on. But one day it's just not going to go on anymore. And then you're just going to see the mother of all implosions.
And the thing is, again, that we are seeing that right now. I mean, Americans, again, I shouldn't say all Americans, most Americans don't even pay attention. I mean, I guarantee you that that 1 out of 10 at most are even aware of where the Dow is, that it was at a record high or what it's doing on a daily basis, whereas 15 years ago, 9 out of 10 Americans. So it's not like this is working anymore where people look at it and go, oh, well, I guess America's okay. The only place it's, quote, okay is the Wall Street commentary, which is biased, and some, but not all of the mainstream media commentary, which is biased. And of course, no one's reading that anyway. I mean, people are fending for themselves. We talked last week about the malaise that's setting over America. You see less holiday spending, less holiday advertising. I don't see it, all these commercials with the Nutcracker music, how you need to go out and spend, because people don't care. We're not getting Christmas cards like we used to. People don't care. They're worried about themselves right now. And, and I just fear what Christmas and Hanukkah and all that next year is going to look like, because whatever you see today is going to be considered the good old days compared to what's coming next year.
Hey, you notice how many less lights are out there this year?
Well, I don't know about lights, but
I think there's
our
less
street,
lights.
do you have less lights where you are?
It's hard to know. I've only lived here a couple years, but it seems to me there's less lights. Anecdotal, granted, but it just seems there's less.
Well, my neighborhood has a lot of kids of the age where they want lights. So I think there's some demographics involved. But lights don't equal holiday spending, that's for sure.
Yep. That's for sure. And the spending's definitely down. That Hollywood spirit, Jubilee, all that. I think you've definitely got something there. It's not what it was in prior years. Certainly not when we were growing up,
Well, I remember last year was the worst holiday spending season since 2009, which was just following the worst financial crisis since the Depression. And this year, sales are down 11% from last year. And a lot of them, the sales now are online, and the online sales are even more competitively priced than the ones that are in the store. And of course, also more online sales means more people laid off from brick and mortar and more commercial real estate plunges, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the list of the carnage that's just starting. And of course, we at least have the ability through our reserve currency and our amazing derivatives and algorithms and market manipulation schemes to keep some semblance of financial market, stability. I mean, look at Greece with their snap elections tomorrow or Wednesday. The stock market fell 20% in the last 3 days. Look at the Middle Eastern stock markets. I saw Dubai is down, I think, 30% in the last week or 10 days alone. I mean, these are some serious moves. The Russian ruble is down 10% today. And gold, by the way, gold in Russian rubles is now up over 100% this year to an all-time high. Japanese yen gold is about 5% from its all-time high. Even the Indian rupee, I see, is getting crushed again today. Indian rupee is only about 20% from its all-time high. On average, I mean, most currencies, gold is down only about, I'd say, about 25% from its all-time high, which is pretty close. Because it doesn't take much, and we know gold's inelasticity. The higher it goes, the more people buy it. So, you're talking about record demand, and we're at a point where you could very well have a gold rush around the world. I mean, I'm shocked we're not seeing it today. I'm shocked they've been able to prevent it today, but it's coming as sure as night follows day.
Yeah, agreed there. Anyway, find Andy's work over at milesfranklin.com. Subscribe to his daily missive along with Bill Halter's. And hey, while you're at it, go over to Financial Survival Network, subscribe to our newsletter as well, and check out the work of our webmaster, Stefan. He's got Andy's work on there, as well as so many others who are trying to tell you the truth, trying to get you out of the bubble of denial. It's so destructive. And act while you can do something about it, because, hey, by the time the world figures this out, Andy, it's going to be too late.
Yeah, heck, my watch alarm I hear in my drawer right behind me is going off. I didn't even have it set. I mean, it knows what's coming, and it's already happening around the world. It's only a matter of time before any semblance of it not being happening here occurs. And my God, that oil industry, I can't even tell you what it's going to look like, the capital spending and the employment situation 2 months from now.
I can't wait to talk to Dr. Frack, see what's going on with him. We'll have him on the show as well. I mean, yeah, that was the one bright spot in the economy, Andy, was the oil, I mean, it's millions of jobs here, millions of jobs.
And the thing is, it really wasn't a bright spot. It was as real as the housing bubble in 2007. I mean, the Fed created it with money printing, and Wall Street fostered it with all these weapons of financial destruction. And it was all a fraud, and it'll be the same exact thing.
Unfortunately, that's what it's shaping up to be. Hey, talk to you next week, Andy, and be well, calm down. It's all going to work out.
Yeah, I guess.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Every week the show is growing. Would you like to be a part of it? Then go to clubfsn.com and help support us with $1, $2, $5, or $10 a month and get a host of premium content with newsletters dropped into your mailbox, free books, private audio clips, webinars, and much more. Then join clubfsn.com. If you want to get ahead of the trend and ensure your family's financial security before it's too late, go to clubfsn.com and sign up.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.